When this retired police dog collapses on a hike, his family rushes him to the vet. The doctor turns pale when he discovers the cause of his pain, and he has to act fast if he wants to save him. The car was quiet. The only noise came from the children, who were making soothing sounds to the dog that was groaning from pain. He had just collapsed on their hike, and his family was worried sick. He was awake, but kept looking at them with pleading eyes, like he was begging them to help him. Creed hadn't been in their lives for too long, but they all adored him. Seeing him like this was simply heartbreaking. Liz just kept hoping that the vet could do something for this brave dog. He had worked hard for his community before retiring. If anyone deserved the time to just be carefree, then it was Creed. But now, it looked like he wouldn't have the chance to enjoy his life. By the time they reached the vet, his breathing was shallow and labored. 2 nurses took him to the exam room, and as soon as they started scanning him, they turned pale. The vet couldn't believe what he saw either. It was going to be hard to explain to the family what was going on. In the meantime, Liz and the kids sat in the waiting room with their eyes full of tears. The mom looked at her children and hoped that she hadn't set them up for the biggest heartache in their young lives. They had been begging for a dog for years, and losing him would break their hearts. When she had decided they were ready for the responsibility of raising a pet, she had looked into adopting a dog that was retiring from the military or as a police officer. Not only were they well trained, but they also deserved to have the best home possible. They had served their communities, and after retirement, they should have the chance to simply be playful. She gave her name up in plenty of different places, including the Police Dog Training Academy. Some dogs can't complete the training, but that doesn't mean they aren't smart. She had given her name everywhere she could think of, but she was still surprised when someone contacted her. The call came from the local police station. They had a dog named Creed who was retiring in a few weeks. Most of the time, when a canine police officer retires, it goes home with its partner. But in this case, the officer who had been working with him was unable to adopt Creed. They had nowhere for him to go. Liz and her family could come for a visit and see if it could work out. That was the first time her children heard about her plan, and they were over the moon. They wanted a dog more than anything, and this sounded like the perfect opportunity. But would Creed click with the family? Liz and the kids went to the police station and were taken out into the yard. There, the dog was given the off-duty command. He could just hang out with them like any other dog would. Liz was slightly worried about the dog's size, but he was so gentle with her children that he quickly put her mind at ease. Creed and the kids got along wonderfully. But when the children went to get a tour of the police station hotspots, it was time for Liz to get acquainted with him as well. As soon as the children disappeared, Creed came over and sat against her legs. It was love at first sight for both of them. The dog was loving and super smart. He was exactly what they had hoped for. They started the paperwork to get the dog adopted, and it wasn't long before he was on his last patrol. The family wanted to be there when they called Creed's call sign over the radio and officially retired him from the force. It was a beautiful moment, and they were happy they could see it. The dog was finally coming home with them, and they had prepared the best homecoming for him. He took some toys home from his previous life, but he had loads waiting for him at the new place. They had his bed set up, and the kids were excited to show him his new toys. The next few months were some of the happiest that the family had ever experienced. Creed brought something to the family that had been missing. He was sweet and protective, and the kids had a blast playing with him. When they went to sleep at night, he curled up next to the adults to cuddle and watch television. It was safe to say that they all adored the dog, and that was why their next experience was going to be so traumatic and hard for all of them. That day, they took Creed on a hike, and the children ran slightly ahead of them. They did it on purpose because it was funny to see how quickly the dog would stop them if he thought they had strayed too far from their parents. He needed order in his life, and they would gladly give that to him. He had been running and jumping all day. That was why they didn't see what was coming. The dog was running towards the children when he suddenly just dropped. His back legs gave out completely. He couldn't walk anymore, much less run. He lay there in terrible pain for several minutes. They were all terrified and quickly decided to take him to the vet. Liz's husband carried the dog to the car and then rushed to the clinic. When the vet came out of the exam room, they thought he was about to tell them that Creed was too old to play like that. But when he told them that his pain was caused by a bullet lodged in the lower part of his spine, they were left speechless. The bullet was causing swelling around the spine, and that was why the dog couldn't walk anymore. They had to remove it right away. The operation carried a lot of risks, but there were a lot more if they left it there. Liz and her husband immediately consented to the surgery. They all gave Creed kisses, and then the vet took him into the operating room. While they waited, they couldn't help but wonder how this could be possible. Liz wanted to know how her dog had ended up with a bullet still in his body, so she phoned the officer who helped them with the adoption. The information that the officer gave explained a lot. Creed had been one of the best police dogs in the force, and that meant they had sent him and his handler to some of the most dangerous situations they had. Until one mission went completely wrong. They went into a house search that should have been completely routine and relatively safe. They served the bad guy's search warrants and started to look around. Everything should have been easy, but there were things that the guy didn't want them to find. He pulled out a gun and started shooting. No one saw it coming. He aimed directly at Creed's partner. The dog could react much faster than anyone else, so he jumped on his human and pushed him out of the way. The bullet that was meant for the handler struck Creed. The dog was rushed to the police vet and stabilized. However, they found that the bullet was in a spot they couldn't operate on. But there was a small upside. The bullet could sit there for years and the dog would be fine unless it suddenly shifted, which is exactly what had happened during the hike. Liz and her family couldn't imagine life without Creed anymore. They just hoped they wouldn't have to. After hours in the operating room, the vet came out and gave them the news. Creed was going to be fine. They had retrieved the bullet and there was no permanent damage to his spine. The dog would come home soon, and after a few weeks of rehab, would be perfectly able to walk and run again. The family got to see him for a while, and then they left him at the clinic for the night. But when they walked outside, they were surprised. Several cops were waiting for an update. Creed was a cop first, and he was their family too. Some even gave donations to his care. The dog was loved, both by his first and his forever family. And they were all going to make sure he was treated like the hero he was for the rest of his life. What a great ending! Would you like to adopt a retired police dog? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Join us again for even more incredible stories.